historic wisdom meets everyday life. In these episodes, we'll be going through Proverbs, looking at the passages and finding applications for our lives. So before we properly get into today's episode, we're going to have a little recap from the last one. We're going to read from verses 1 to 7, and then I'm just going to give a brief overview of our thoughts from last week. Alright, starting from Proverbs chapter 1, 1 to 7. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel, to understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So, looking back over last week's Bible study, the first point was pursuing wisdom actively, something we all need to do and we all need to be better at. The second point was valuing instruction, which happens to be a reoccurring theme for this Bible study. The third would be slowing down, taking time to appreciate what you have and what you've been given, and taking time to reflect on things, not just to give it a brief thought and leave it, to genuinely stop, slow down, and take time. Those were our main points. However, in verse 7, it tells us that there is no knowledge before fear of the Lord. So to be able to gain and to receive the knowledge that God has for us, we must first have fear of Him, have respect. And with that, we'll get into our Bible study. So now we're going to start with our readings for today, Proverbs 1 verses 8 to 19. My son, hear the instruction of your father, and do not forsake the law of your mother, for they will be a graceful ornament on your head and chains about your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait to shed blood. Let us lurk secretly for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them alive like Sheol, and whole, like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all kinds of precious possessions. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in your lot among us. Let us have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your foot from their path. For their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird. But they lie in wait for their own blood. They lurk secretly for their own lives. So are the ways of everyone who is greedy for gain. It takes away the life of its owners. So for verses 8 to 9, we can kind of see that it's telling us to honor and value parental wisdom. Wisdom that has been given to us by our parents or mentors should be valued. The knowledge is given to us so that we can be ahead in life, so that we don't have to face the consequences from learning by experience. The advice that we were given is there for a reason and not to hinder us or to steal the fun from us. I think that's something I feel everybody when they were younger, they were being told off by their parents or told not to do something, and in your head it's like, oh, but if I do this it's going to be so much more fun than if I do as I'm told and don't do it. So I think it's definitely harder to apply when you're older, but I think value the wisdom you were given, because they probably had to learn it the hard way. So, from verses 10 to 14, I think the overall message would be recognize and reject sinful enticement. Because sinful people will try and persuade us. They will flaunt their wealth and their great life, but behind their so called great life is a whole lot of hurt and brokenness. Sin sells belonging, profit, and fun, but it always hides the cost. It can look fun in the moment, but in the end, it's only going to hurt you. So then, in verses 15 to 19, we are given a warning to see the self-distraction. The Bible tells us not to even step near the sinner's path, not just telling us to say no, but to stay far away from their path. Because sinners think they have set a trap for others, but they only end up trapping themselves. So we must see the net that is laid out in front of us and choose to walk far away before we get caught up in a self-destructive life as slaves to sin. Because sin, it may seem innocent, but you will get caught up in it, and you may think that you're going to hurt somebody else, but the only person you're going to end up hurting is yourself. Another thing we can take away from the first few verses is the fact that we are all learners. We're all young in our knowledge and in our wisdom, and we all need good counsel. Every bit of wisdom that is given to us from people who are further along in our walk is there to help us, not to hinder us. This term is not to describe the believers because we're all sinners, but rather it's used to describe the unbelievers that continually sin, have chosen a life of sin, and are persuading others to fall into sin as well. These verses also show just how well the devil knows how to get to us, because peer pressure is one of the easiest ways to convince somebody to do something they don't actually want to do, to convince somebody to sin. It is literally the easiest way to do so. So I have 6 main applications from these verses. The first being valuing godly instructions. Don't outgrow or disguise wise parental or mentor teaching, and regularly revisit biblical principles and family values as you face new seasons, because it can bring a lot more knowledge and honor to your life. The second being resist peer pressure with a pre-decided no. Prepare your response in advance. If something feels off, do not consent to it, even if it costs popularity or short-term fun. Bad company corrupts good character. So you need to figure out what you believe in and what you agree with before you do stuff, so that when the time comes, you can already have a pre-decided no to save yourself a lot of trouble. The third being guarding against greed. In this day and age, we need to pursue honest work and contentment. Greed destroys relationships, integrity, and probably eventually even your own life. So you need to work well and hard and honestly, and never take more than you need. The fourth one would be choose your friends and influences wisely. The company you keep shapes your path and who you are. Surround yourself with people who value wisdom, integrity, and the fear of the Lord, because you can have no knowledge if you haven't first had fear of your Lord. The second to last would be proactive as a parent or a mentor. If you're around young children or young believers, you need to teach them. You need to help them to understand real-world evil, not to scare them, but to equip them. You need to be a good role model, listening to God's word yourself. Last but not least would be discernment, discerning the long game of life. Sin often looks the most profitable up close, but destroys our lives. We need to ask, where does this path ultimately lead? And choose a way that leads to life and security. Because if we're always spending time looking at the small parts and not at the bigger picture, then it's very easy to fall into sin.